The hospital room smelled of antiseptic and dying roses. Margaret Ashford lay propped against starched white pillows, her once commanding presence reduced to a frail silhouette beneath thin cotton sheets. The rhythmic beep of the heart monitor punctuated each labored breath, a metronome counting down to an inevitable finale. Through the window, November rain streaked the glass like tears, blurring the city lights into watercolor smudges of amber and gray. Victoria stood at the foot of the bed, her fingers wrapped around the cold metal rail. She had been standing there for 20 minutes, watching her mother's chest rise and fall with mechanical precision. The nurses had said it would be soon. Hours, perhaps. Maybe less. "Come closer." The voice was barely a whisper, rough as sandpaper against wood. Victoria's breath caught. Her mother hadn't spoken in 3 days. She moved to the bedside, her heels clicking against the linoleum floor with a sound that seemed obscenely loud in the hushed room. The scent of her mother's perfume, Chanel No. 5 as always, mixed with something else now, something sour and final. Margaret's eyes opened. They were still sharp, still that piercing gray that had intimidated board members and charity organizers for 5 decades. Even now, even dying, her gaze held power. "Mother?" Victoria's voice cracked. She cleared her throat, hating the vulnerability in that single word. A skeletal hand emerged from beneath the sheets, trembling. Margaret gestured weakly toward the nightstand. "The drawer. Bottom one." Victoria hesitated, then opened it. Inside lay a single manila envelope, yellowed with age, sealed with red wax that had cracked along its edges. No markings, no address, just the weight of something heavy inside. "Take it," Margaret whispered, "but don't open it until—" The heart monitor's rhythm stuttered. "Mother?" Victoria gripped the envelope, the paper rough beneath her fingers. "Mother, what is this?" Margaret's breathing grew shallow. Her lips moved, forming words that barely carried sound. Victoria leaned closer, close enough to feel the warmth of her mother's final breaths against her ear. "You are not who you think you are." The words hit Victoria like ice water. "What? What do you mean?" Everything you know is a lie." Margaret's hand clutched Victoria's wrist with surprising strength. "I'm sorry. God forgive me. I'm so sorry." "Mother, you're not making sense. What lie? What do you—" But Margaret's eyes had already closed. The grip on Victoria's wrist loosened and fell away. The heart monitor's beep became a steady, horrible whine. Victoria stood frozen, the envelope clutched in her hands as nurses rushed into the room. Their voices seemed to come from underwater, muffled and distant. Someone touched her shoulder, guided her gently backward. She watched them work over her mother's body with mechanical efficiency, watched the futile attempt to restart a heart that had already made its final decision. At 11:47 p.m. on November 14th, Margaret Ashford was pronounced dead, and Victoria stood in the corner of that staring room, staring at the envelope in her trembling hands, feeling the ground beneath her feet begin to crack and shift. Everything you know is a lie. Outside, the rain intensified, drumming against the window like 1,000 urgent fingers, trying to warn her, trying to tell her that opening that envelope would destroy everything she thought she knew about her life, her family, and herself. But it was already too late. 3 days later, Victoria sat in the leather chair of Harrison Webb's office, the same chair she'd sat in countless times before. The estate lawyer's domain was all dark wood and brass fixtures, the kind of old money elegance that spoke of trusts and legacies stretching back generations. Rain continued to fall outside, as if the city itself was mourning Margaret Ashford's passing. The envelope remained in Victoria's purse, unopened. She had tried, God knows she'd tried. 3 times she'd broken the wax seal, and 3 times she'd stopped, Margaret's final words echoing in her mind. Something had held her back, fear perhaps, or the certainty that whatever lay inside would change everything. Harrison cleared his throat, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses. He was 73, had been the family's attorney for 40 years, and had never looked more uncomfortable. "Shall we begin?" He opened a folder, pulling out documents that crackled with official importance. "As you know, your mother's estate is substantial." Victoria nodded. She'd grown up surrounded by wealth. The Ashford name meant something in this city. Old money, social standing, philanthropic endeavors that warranted plaques in museum wings and hospital corridors. The primary residence on Beacon Hill, of course, goes to you, along with the summer home in Martha's Vineyard, the investment portfolio, the art collection. Harrison's voice droned on, listing assets with the enthusiasm of someone reading a grocery list. Victoria barely listened. She'd expected all of this. She was the only child, the sole heir. This was merely paperwork, formality. However, Harrison paused, and something in that single word made Victoria's attention snap back to him. "There are complications." Complications? He pulled out another document, this one looking older than the others. The paper was heavier, the typing done on an actual typewriter rather than a modern printer. "Your mother established a second trust, a separate entity, very discreetly managed." Victoria leaned forward. "I don't understand. What kind of trust?" "It was created 34 years ago, funded monthly, without interruption, up until last month." Harrison's hands trembled slightly as he held the paper. "The beneficiary is listed only as E.M., no full name, no address. The funds were distributed through a third party, a private banking concern in Switzerland that specializes in anonymity." The room seemed to tilt slightly. "How much money are we talking about?" "Approximately $12 million total over the course of 34 years. Victoria's breath stopped. 12 million? "Your mother was very particular that this trust remain hidden. I was only made aware of it upon her death per her instructions." Harrison removed his glasses, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "Victoria, I have to ask, do you know who E.M. might be?" She shook her head slowly, mind racing. No. But even as she spoke, her hand moved unconsciously to her purse, to the envelope inside. "You are not who you think you are." "There's more." Harrison pulled out a photograph, sliding it across the polished desk. "This was included in the sealed documents. Your mother left no explanation." Victoria picked up the photograph with numb fingers. It showed a young woman, 25, maybe 30, standing on a beach. The photo was old, the colors slightly faded, the fashion distinctly late 1980s. The woman wore a white sundress and was laughing at something off camera, her dark hair whipping in the wind. She looked exactly like Victoria. Not similar, not reminiscent, exactly like her. "Who is this?" Victoria's face barely qualified as a whisper. "I was hoping you could tell me." Harrison's expression was grave. "The photo was dated June 1989, 2 months before you were born." The implications hung in the air like smoke. Victoria stared at the photograph, at this woman who wore her face, who stood on a beach she didn't recognize in a moment she had no memory of, which was impossible because she hadn't been born yet. "Harrison, what the hell is going on?" "I don't know, but Victoria," he hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "Your mother left one final instruction. She insisted that before any of the inheritance could be transferred, you must travel to a specific location." "What location?" He slid a business card across the desk. On it, written in Margaret's distinctive handwriting, was an address in Providence, Rhode Island. Below it, a single line: "Ask for Thomas. He has what you need." What I need for what? She didn't say, but she was adamant. You must go there within 7 days of her death, or the entire estate goes into probate for an indefinite period. Her words were very specific. Victoria must learn the truth, or she inherits nothing but lies. Victoria stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. The walls of the office suddenly felt too close, the air too thick. She grabbed the photograph, the address card, stuffing them into her purse alongside the cursed envelope. I need to go. Victoria, wait, there's paperwork too. Send it to me. I'll sign whatever needs signing. But I need to think. She was already at the door, already moving, propelled by a desperate need to be anywhere but in that office, facing those impossible questions. Harrison called after her. Victoria, who do you think EM is? She paused at the threshold, looking back at the elderly lawyer. In the dim light of his office, surrounded by decades of family secrets preserved in manila folders and legal documents, he looked ancient, tired. I think, Victoria said slowly, that I'm about to find out who I really am. And she left, stepping out into the rain-soaked streets of Boston, clutching a purse full of mysteries and feeling for the first time in her 33 years like a stranger in her own life. Behind her, Harrison Webb sat alone in his office, staring at the open folder, at the photograph of a dead woman who wore Victoria's face, at the documents that would unravel everything the Ashford family had built. He reached for his phone, dialing a number he'd been instructed to call only in this precise circumstance. "It's begun," he said quietly when someone answered. "She knows, or rather, she's starting to suspect." A pause. "No, she hasn't opened the envelope yet, but she will. They always do." Another pause, longer this time. "God help us all when she does." He hung up, and in the silence that followed, the rain against his window sounded like applause, or perhaps like a warning. Victoria's hands gripped the steering wheel of her Mercedes until her knuckles turned white. The highway stretched ahead of her like a dark ribbon, rain-slicked and gleaming under the glow of passing streetlights. It was nearly midnight, and she'd been driving for an hour, the address in Providence pulling her forward like a magnet. She should have waited until morning, should have slept, processed, approached this mystery with a clear head and rational thought. Instead, she'd gone home to her brownstone on Marlborough Street, paced through rooms that suddenly felt like stage sets, beautiful and hollow, and grabbed her keys before she could talk herself out of it. The envelope sat on the passenger seat, still sealed. Victoria glanced at it for the 100th time, then forced her eyes back to the road. The temptation to pull over, to rip it open right there on the side of I-95 was almost overwhelming. But something stopped her, some instinct that told her she needed to be somewhere safe, somewhere stable, before she learned whatever truth her mother had hidden for 33 years. Her phone buzzed. She ignored it. It had been ringing constantly since she'd left Harrison's office, her assistant, her friends, the funeral director, various social obligations that suddenly seemed meaningless. How could she think about flower arrangements and memorial services when her entire identity was crumbling? The photograph lay on top of the envelope. Even in the dim light of passing cars, Victoria could see her, the woman who wore her face. She'd studied it for so long that every detail was burned into her memory. The slight tilt of the head, the dimple in the left cheek, the exact shade of dark brown hair that Victoria had always thought she'd inherited from her mother. But Margaret's hair was blonde, fair and golden like spun silk. How had Victoria never questioned that before? The GPS announced her exit. Victoria took the off-ramp into Providence, following the mechanical voice through darkened streets lined with historic buildings. The city felt abandoned at this hour, shadows pooling in doorways and alleys like spilled ink. The address led her to a neighborhood that straddled the line between gentrification and decay. Victorian houses stood shoulder to shoulder, some lovingly restored with fresh paint and tended gardens, others sagging and dark, their windows like dead eyes. Number 47 Benefit Street was somewhere in between, a three-story townhouse with peeling gray paint and a light burning in a first-floor window. A brass plaque beside the door read, T. Marlowe, Private Investigators. Victoria sat in her car for a long moment, engine idling, wipers beating a steady rhythm against the windshield. A private investigator. Her mother had sent her to a private investigator. Why? She turned off the engine. The silence that followed felt heavy, expectant. Victoria grabbed the envelope and the photograph, stepped out into the rain, and ran for the shelter of the townhouse's covered porch. The door opened before she could knock. A man stood in the doorway, late 60s, tall and lean, with silver hair and eyes the color of steel. He wore jeans and a flannel shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows, revealing armfors marked with old scars. He looked like he'd been expecting her. Victoria Ashford. It wasn't a question. You're Thomas? Thomas Marlowe. Come in, you're soaked. His office was exactly what she'd expected. Cluttered desk, filing cabinets, walls covered with corkboards and photographs connected with red string. The cliched detective setup. But the coffee he poured her was good, and the chair he offered was comfortable. And when he looked at her, his eyes held something that might have been sympathy. Your mother called me 3 weeks ago. Said I'd be getting a visitor after she died. Said that visitor would need answers. Do you know what this is about? Some of it, not all. He nodded toward the envelope in her lap. I assume she gave you that. She died holding it. Her last words were... Victoria's voice caught. She said, I'm not who I think I am. That everything I know is a lie. Thomas was quiet for a moment, studying her face with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. How much do you know about your birth? The question caught her off guard. What? Humor me. What do you know about the day you were born? Victoria frowned, reaching back through memory. August 12th, 1992, Massachusetts General Hospital. My mother always said it was a difficult birth. She never had more children after me. Do you have a birth certificate? Of course, it's in my safe deposit box at the bank. Original or copy? Copy, I think. Why does that matter? Thomas stood, moving to one of his filing cabinets. He pulled out a thick folder, laying it on the desk between them. Because original birth certificates tell stories. They show corrections, amendments. They're messier than copies. He opened the folder. Inside were documents, photographs, newspaper clippings, a paper trail of something Victoria couldn't yet comprehend. Your mother hired me 6 months ago. She was sick even then, though she hid it well. She knew her time was limited. Thomas pulled out a photograph, another one, different from the beach photo, but showing the same woman. This time she was pregnant, visibly so, standing in front of a small house with white siding. She asked me to find someone, this woman. Victoria's heart hammered. Who is she? Her name was Elizabeth Monroe. She died 33 years ago, 2 days after giving birth to a daughter. The room spun. Victoria gripped the arms of her chair, trying to steady herself. No, that's not... The daughter was adopted through a private arrangement. Very private, very expensive. The kind of adoption that doesn't leave paper trails. Thomas's voice was gentle but relentless. Elizabeth Monroe died of complications from childbirth. She was 24 years old, unmarried, and had no family to speak of. Before she died, she made Margaret promise 2 things: that her daughter would be raised with love and opportunity, and that when the time was right, she would learn the truth. Thomas slid another document across the desk. This is your original birth certificate, the one Margaret kept hidden. Victoria's hands trembled as she picked it up. The paper was official, stamped and sealed, but the names... Mother, Elizabeth Marie Monroe. Father, unknown. Child, Victoria Elizabeth Monroe. Date of birth, August 10th, 1992. Not August 12th, August 10th. Not Ashford, Monroe. The woman in the photograph, Elizabeth Monroe. She's my mother, my real mother. Yes. And Margaret wasn't. She loved you. Make no mistake about that. Thomas's voice softened. Everything I learned about Margaret Ashford suggests she loved you fiercely, as any mother could love a daughter. But biologically? No, she wasn't your mother. Victoria felt tears sliding down her cheeks, hot and unwelcome. Her entire life had been a performance, a carefully constructed fiction. Every birthday, every Mother's Day, every time she'd looked in the mirror and tried to find traces of Margaret in her own face, all of it had been built on a lie. Why? Her voice broke. Why would she do this? That, Thomas said, gesturing to the envelope still clutched in Victoria's lap, is probably explained in there. Victoria looked down at it. The red wax seal had crocked further during her drive, as if the envelope itself was eager to spill its secrets. With shaking hands, she broke it open. Inside was a letter, written in Margaret's elegant script, and beneath it, another photograph. This one showed two women sitting at a cafe, Margaret, young and beautiful, and Elizabeth Monroe, laughing at something, their heads bent close together like old friends, like sisters. Victoria began to read, and with each word, the foundation of her world crumbled a little more. My dearest Victoria, if you're reading this, then I am gone, and Thomas has done as I asked. I pray you can forgive me for what I'm about to tell you. I pray that the love between us was real enough, strong enough to survive the truth. Elizabeth Monroe was not just your biological mother. She was my sister. Victoria's breath stopped. Not by blood, but by choice. We met in college, two lost girls trying to find our place in a world that demanded perfection. She was everything I wasn't, warm, spontaneous, free. We were inseparable for 10 years. She was the sister my cold, formal family never gave me. When she got pregnant, she was terrified. The father, I never knew who he was and she wouldn't say, had abandoned her. She had no money, no support. I was newly widowed, wealthy but alone, and I offered her a solution. I would adopt the baby, raise you as my own, give you everything my money could buy. She agreed, but only with conditions. She wanted to be part of your life, to watch you grow, even from a distance. So I set up the trust. $12,000 a month, enough for her to live comfortably, to be nearby, to see you occasionally. We told everyone I was pregnant. I wore padding, avoided social gatherings, and when the time came, I arranged for a private birth at a discreet facility. 2 days later, Elizabeth died from complications no one had predicted, and I was left holding you, this tiny, perfect thing, and a promise I'd made to tell you the truth someday. But the years passed, and you were so perfectly mine. You called me mother. You looked at me with love. How could I take that away? How could I tell you that the woman you thought gave you life was actually a stranger who'd bought you? I'm a coward, Victoria. I kept this secret for 33 years because I couldn't bear to lose you. But you deserve to know who you are, where you came from. Elizabeth Monroe was brilliant and kind and full of light. She would have loved you beyond measure. She did love you, even in the brief time she held you. I'm sorry. I'm so desperately sorry. Find out who your father is. Elizabeth kept secrets even from me, but you deserve that truth too. With all my love, broken and selfish as it is, Margaret. Victoria sat frozen, the letter trembling in her hands. Around her, Thomas Marlowe's office felt like it was underwater, sounds muffled, colors bleeding into one another. Victoria? Thomas's voice seemed to come from miles away. Are you all right? She looked up at him, tears streaming freely now. Elizabeth Monroe was my mother, Margaret's best friend, and she died 2 days after I was born. Yes. The trust payments. They weren't for Elizabeth. They couldn't have been. She was dead. Thomas's expression shifted. Surprise, then concern. What? Victoria's mind was racing now, pieces falling into place with sickening clarity. The payments continued for 34 years, but if Elizabeth died 33 years ago, who the hell was Margaret paying? The question hung in the air like a guillotine blade. Thomas grabbed the trust documents from his desk, scanning them with new urgency. His face paled. Jesus Christ. What? What is it? The payments stopped last month, right before Margaret died. He looked up at Victoria, and in his eyes she saw fear. Victoria, Thomas pulled out another document from his file, one Victoria hadn't seen yet. It was a police report, yellowed with age. The official cause was listed as postpartum complications, but one of the nurses filed a report claiming she saw bruising around Elizabeth's neck. The report was dismissed, the nurse fired shortly after. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. You're saying someone killed my mother? I'm saying someone might have, and Margaret's been paying them off for 33 years to keep that secret buried. Who? Who would do that? I don't know, but those trust payments were going somewhere, to someone, and now that Margaret's dead and the money stopped, Victoria, whoever's been receiving those payments might come looking for you. As if summoned by his words, the lights in the office suddenly went out. Both of them froze in the darkness. Outside, the streetlights still glowed. This wasn't a power outage. Someone had cut the electricity to this building specifically. Move. Back door. Now. But before they could take a step, the sound of shattering glass erupted from the front window. A figure dressed in black dropped through the window, landing in a crouch among the scattered shards. And in their hand, gleaming in the dim light from the street, was a gun pointed directly at Victoria's heart.
Time crystallized into slow motion. Victoria saw the gun barrel, black and infinite, saw Thomas's hand moving toward a desk drawer, saw the intruder's finger beginning to squeeze the trigger. And then she moved. Instinct took over. She grabbed the heavy coffee pot from Thomas's desk and hurled it at the figure. It struck their arm just as the gun fired, the shot going wide, burying itself in the wall with a sound like a thunderclap in the enclosed space. Thomas had his own weapon out now, a snub-nosed revolver that looked ancient but deadly. "Federal agent, drop your weapon." The figure in black paused, then, incredibly, laughed. The voice that emerged was cultured, educated, with a faint accent Victoria couldn't place. Thomas Marlowe, retired FBI, 8 years on the Organized Crime Task Force, 3 commendations for bravery, 1 for getting your partner killed. Don't pretend you're still federal anything. Drop the gun. Instead, the figure slowly raised their free hand and pulled back their hood. A woman stared back at them. Early 40s, sharp features, dark eyes that glittered with intelligence and something else, something hungry. Her black hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and she wore tactical gear like it was evening wear. "My name is Diana Volkoff," she said calmly, as if she hadn't just tried to kill someone. "And I'm not here to hurt you, Victoria Ashford. Or, should I say, Victoria Monroe." Victoria's heart hammered. "How do you know who I am?" "I've known for a very long time." Diana carefully lowered her gun, not dropping it, but pointing it at the floor rather than at our hearts, a gesture of temporary truce. "I've been watching you since you were born, just like I watched Elizabeth Monroe, just like I watched Margaret Ashford." Thomas kept his revolver trained on her. "Talk fast, and if I don't like what I hear, you're leaving here in a body bag." Diana's smile was cold. Such dramatics. But fine, here's the abbreviated version. Elizabeth Monroe didn't die from childbirth complications. She was murdered. And I know who killed her because I've spent 33 years investigating it. The revelation hit like a physical blow. Victoria gripped the edge of the desk to steady herself. "You're lying." "Am I? Tell me, Victoria, do you know what your mother, your biological mother, did for a living before she got pregnant?" Silence. She was a geneticist, brilliant, cutting edge. She worked for a private research facility called Helix Corp. Very discreet, very exclusive, very illegal. They were conducting experiments, the kind that governments officially condemn and unofficially fund. Elizabeth discovered something she shouldn't have, and they killed her for it. Thomas lowered his gun slightly. Helix Corp shut down in 1994. Federal investigation, the works. The company shut down. The research didn't. It just went underground. Diana pulled a flash drive from her pocket, tossing it on the desk. Everything's there. Files I've compiled over 3 decades. Elizabeth's work, the experiments, the reason she died. Victoria stared at the flash drive like it was a live grenade. Why? Why would you spend 30 years investigating this? Diana's expression shifted, and for the first time, something human flickered across her face. Pain, grief. Because Elizabeth Monroe was my sister. The world tilted again. Your what? Half-sister, same father, different mothers. I was older by 12 years. I watched her grow up, brilliant and beautiful and too good for this world. Diana's voice hardened, and I watched someone snuff out her life when she threatened to expose their secrets. Thomas stepped between Diana and Victoria, his gun raised again. If you're really her sister, why didn't you come forward before? Why hide? Why break in here like some kind of... Because the people who killed Elizabeth are still out there, still powerful, still watching. Diana's eyes locked on Victoria's. And they know about you. They've always known. Margaret's payments weren't blackmail. They were protection money. Victoria's blood turned to ice. Protection from what? From them finding out what you are. I don't understand. I'm just a person. I'm nobody special. Diana laughed, but there was no humor in it. Oh, Victoria, you really don't know, do you? Elizabeth never told Margaret. She died before she could. Told her what?
Diana took a step closer, and in the dim light filtering through the broken window, her face looked ancient, haunted. Why do you think Elizabeth got pregnant in the first place? She was 24, brilliant, focused entirely on her career. She wasn't dating anyone, wasn't interested in relationships. So how did she end up carrying you? The implications were too horrible to voice. Victoria shook her head, backing away. No, don't say it. Elizabeth didn't have a one-night stand. She didn't have a secret lover. She became pregnant as part of an experiment, Helix Corp's experiment. Diana's words fell like hammer blows. You weren't conceived naturally, Victoria. You were created, designed, engineered. The room spun. Victoria's legs gave out and she collapsed back into the chair, her vision tunneling. This couldn't be real. This couldn't be happening. You're insane, she whispered. Am I? Think about it. Have you ever been seriously sick? Ever broken a bone? Do you heal faster than normal? Are you smarter than you should be? Better at things you've never practiced? Victoria's mind raced through memories. Her childhood doctor, always amazed at how healthy she was. The time in college when she'd fallen downstairs, should have broken her wrist, but it was only bruised and healed in days. Her perfect recall, her ability to learn languages and skills with uncanny speed. She'd always thought she was just lucky, blessed with good genes. But if Diana was telling the truth, then it wasn't luck, it was design. What did they do to me? Victoria's voice came out strangled. What am I? Diana opened her mouth to answer, but Thomas interrupted. Hold on, just hold the hell on. He grabbed the flash drive, pointing it at Diana like an accusation. If all of this is true, if Victoria really is some kind of genetic experiment, why come here now? Why break in? Why the gun? Because Margaret's dead. The protection money stopped, and that means they'll come for Victoria. They'll want to know what Margaret told her, what Elizabeth left behind, whether any evidence survived. Diana's eyes never left Victoria's face. I broke in because I needed to get to you first, before they did. Who is they? Victoria demanded. You keep saying they like it's some shadowy organization. Give me names, give me proof. Diana was silent for a long moment. Then, The man who ordered your mother's death was a scientist named Dr. Marcus Ashford. The name hit Victoria like a sledgehammer. Ashford, as in your adoptive mother's maiden name, yes. Diana's smile was bitter. Margaret wasn't randomly selected to adopt you. She was Marcus Ashford's niece. The whole thing was arranged. Elizabeth's pregnancy, your birth, Margaret raising you, all of it orchestrated by Marcus to keep you close, to monitor you. Thomas swore viciously. Jesus Christ! Victoria couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Margaret's face swam in her memory. Kind, loving, always there. But had it all been a lie? Had she only taken Victoria in because her uncle, this Marcus Ashford, had ordered it? Where is he? Victoria's voice came out cold, hard. Where is Marcus Ashford? Dead. Died 5 years ago. Heart attack. Or so they say. With these people, you never really know. Then who's running the show now? Who would come after me? Diana's expression turned grim. That's what I've been trying to find out. The organization went underground after Helix Corp was exposed, but they're still out there, still operating, and they have resources you can't imagine. A sound outside made all three of them freeze. Footsteps on the porch, multiple sets. Diana's gun came up instantly. They're here. Who? Thomas moved to the window, careful not to be seen. I don't see any cars. They wouldn't park out front. They're professionals. Diana looked at Victoria. We have about 30 seconds before they breach this building, so you have a choice. Come with me and live long enough to learn the truth, or stay here and become another corpse in the Ashford family tragedy. Victoria looked at Thomas. The old investigator met her eyes and nodded slowly. She's telling the truth, or at least she believes she is. And if there's even a chance that someone's coming for you. The front door exploded inward. Men in tactical gear flooded into the office, moving with military precision. No police badges, no identification, just black uniforms and raised weapons. Diana grabbed Victoria's arm. Move, now. They ran for the back door, Thomas covering their retreat with 2 shots that sent the intruders diving for cover. The hallway beyond was dark, narrow, leading to a rear exit that opened onto an alley. Rain hammered down as they burst outside. Diana's car, a nondescript sedan with mud-splattered plates, was parked 20 feet away. They sprinted for it, Victoria's heart threatening to burst from her chest. Behind them, muzzle flashes lit up the alley like strobe lights. Bullets pinged off the sedan's frame, spiderwebbing the rear window. Diana took another corner at lethal speed, then another, weaving through Providence's narrow streets with the precision of someone who'd planned escape routes in advance. Victoria twisted in her seat, staring back at the receding alley where Thomas Marlowe's body lay cooling in the rain. He's dead, Victoria whispered. They killed him. He knew the risks. Diana's voice was cold, focused. He was FBI. He understood how these things end. You don't even care. I care about keeping you alive long enough to finish what Elizabeth started. Diana's eyes met Victoria's in the rearview mirror. Mourn later, survive now. The sedan merged onto the highway, accelerating into the sparse late-night traffic. Behind them, no headlights followed. They'd lost the tactical team. For now. Victoria slumped against the seat, shock beginning to set in. Her hands were shaking, her whole body was shaking. In the span of 3 days, she'd lost her mother, learned she was adopted, discovered she was the product of illegal genetic experimentation, and watched a man die trying to protect her. Everything you know is a lie. Margaret had tried to warn her, had tried to prepare her, but nothing could have prepared her for this. Where are we going? Victoria's voice sounded hollow to her own ears. Somewhere safe, somewhere they won't think to look. Diana glanced in the mirror again. You still have the flash drive? Victoria checked her purse. The manila envelope, the photographs, the birth certificate, the letter, all still there. And yes, the flash drive Diana had thrown onto Thomas's desk. She must have grabbed it instinctively when they ran. I have it. Good, because that's the only copy in existence. Everything I've learned in 33 years is on that drive. Elizabeth's research notes, the Helix Corp files, evidence of what they did to you. What did they do to me? Victoria leaned forward, her voice rising. You keep talking around it. You said I was engineered. For what? What am I supposed to be? Diana was quiet for so long Victoria thought she wouldn't answer. Then, "Do you know anything about CRISPR, gene editing?" "I've heard of it. It's been in the news." CRISPR is recent, public, limited, but in the 1980s there were private labs doing much more advanced work. Helix Corp was one of them. They were experimenting with genetic enhancement, increasing intelligence, physical capabilities, disease resistance, creating what they called optimal humans. The words hung in the air like poison gas. Elizabeth was part of the team. She believed in the science, the potential to eliminate genetic diseases, to improve quality of life. But then she discovered what they were really doing: the human trials, the embryos that didn't survive, the children who were born with problems. What kind of problems? Aggressive cancers, organ failure, psychological disorders. For every success, there were dozens of failures. And Marcus Ashford, he didn't care. He kept pushing for faster results, more extreme modifications. Diana took another exit heading toward what looked like an industrial area. Abandoned warehouses loomed against the night sky. Elizabeth threatened to expose everything. She had evidence, documentation, so Marcus made her a deal. Participate in one final trial, carry the embryo to term, and he'd shut down the human experimentation program. She'd be proving the process could work safely. Victoria's stomach turned. She agreed? She thought she was saving other women from being used. She thought she could control the situation. Diana's hands tightened on the wheel. She was wrong. They implanted the embryo, monitored her constantly, collected data throughout the pregnancy, and when you were born healthy, perfect, everything they'd hoped for, they killed her to tie up loose ends. But why? If I was proof their process worked. Because Elizabeth had still kept copies of all the evidence, the failed trials, the deaths. Marcus couldn't risk her going public, even with you as proof of concept. So he eliminated her and arranged for Margaret to adopt you. Family takes care of family, after all. And that way, he could continue monitoring your development without arousing suspicion. The sedan pulled into an abandoned warehouse parking lot. Diana killed the engine, and suddenly, the silence was deafening. "For 33 years, Diana continued, you've been an experiment. Every doctor's visit, every medical record, every time Margaret took you for a routine checkup, it was all feeding data back to whoever continued Marcus's work after Helix Corp fell." Victoria felt sick. Margaret knew? I don't think so. Not at first. Maybe not ever. Marcus was careful. He probably told her you just needed regular monitoring because of the difficult adoption circumstances. She loved you. That much was real. But she was also his tool, whether she knew it or not. Victoria stared out at the rain-streaked windshield. Her entire life had been a lie. Every moment, every memory contaminated by the knowledge that she was being watched, studied, analyzed like a lab rat. "What am I?" she asked again. "What did they enhance?" Diana turned in her seat to face her. "Everything. Your immune system is orders of magnitude more efficient than normal. Your cellular regeneration rate is accelerated, your cognitive processing speed, memory retention, pattern recognition, all optimized. You're stronger, faster, smarter than baseline humans. Not superhuman, but the absolute best that human genetics can produce." Then why don't I feel different? Why have I never noticed? Because you have nothing to compare it to. This is your normal. You've never been sick enough to realize you never get sick. You've never failed at something enough to realize you succeed at nearly everything. Your entire frame of reference is skewed. Victoria's mind raced back through her life with this new lens. Her perfect grades that she'd attributed to hard work. Her athletic abilities she'd thought were just natural talent. The way languages came easily to her. The way she could read people's emotions with uncanny accuracy. All of it engineered, designed, manufactured. She wasn't a person. She was a product. "There's something else." Diana's voice dropped lower. Elizabeth's notes mentioned something she called the fail-safe, a built-in limitation to the genetic modifications. She was afraid of what might happen if her enhancements were allowed to fully express themselves without restraint. What kind of failsafe? I don't know. She died before she could document it fully. But whatever it is, it's inside you, part of your genetic code. A sound in the darkness made both women freeze. Footsteps, crunching on gravel. Diana's hand moved to her weapon. Stay in the car, lock the doors. If I don't come back in 5 minutes, take the car and drive. Don't stop, don't look back. Wait, but Diana was already out, moving into the shadows with the grace of a predator. Victoria hit the lock button, her heart hammering as she watched Diana disappear between the warehouses. Silence. Rain drumming on the roof. Her own ragged breathing. Then, a flash of light. A gunshot, muffled by distance. Another shot. Silence again. Victoria's hand moved to the door handle. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to drive away like Diana had said, but she couldn't, not without knowing. She got out of the car, moving carefully toward where Diana had vanished. The rain soaked through her clothes instantly, cold and cleansing. Ahead, she could see a gap between two warehouses, a narrow alley filled with shadows. Another shot rang out, closer this time. Victoria ran toward the sound, her expensive heels abandoned somewhere behind her, her bare feet splashing through puddles. She rounded the corner into the alley and found Diana on her knees, blood spreading across her tactical vest. Standing over her was a figure in a gray suit, perfectly pressed despite the rain. He held a gun aimed at Diana's head. The man turned at Victoria's approach, and she saw his face clearly in the dim light from a distant street lamp. "Hello, Victoria," he said, his voice cultured and calm. "I've waited a long time to meet you." Diana coughed, blood on her lips. "Victoria, run." But Victoria couldn't move, couldn't breathe, because she knew who this man was. "Who are you?" she whispered. The man smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "I'm disappointed you haven't figured it out yet, though I suppose Diana wouldn't have told you. She didn't know herself until very recently." He took a step closer, the gun never wavering at Diana's skull. "My name is Alexander Monroe. I'm your brother." The world stopped. Victoria stared at the man, Alexander, trying to process words that made no sense. Brother. She had a brother. The same gray eyes, the same sharp cheekbones, even the same slight tilt of the head when he spoke. "That's impossible," Victoria heard herself say. "Elizabeth died right after giving birth to me. She couldn't have had other children." "Elizabeth didn't give birth to me." Alexander's smile widened, predatory. "Marcus Ashford did. Or rather, his laugh did. I was the trial run, the prototype. You were the perfected model." Diana spat blood onto the wet pavement. "You're insane. Marcus Ashford died 5 years ago." "Did he?" Alexander laughed, the sound echoing off the warehouse walls. "You've been chasing ghosts for 30 years, Diana, following breadcrumbs Marcus left specifically for you. Did you really think you were closing in on the truth? You were being led, controlled, just like everyone else." He crouched down, pressing the gun barrel against Diana's forehead. She flinched but held his gaze, defiant even in the face of death. "Marcus Ashford is very much alive, and he's very eager to meet his daughter." Victoria's legs nearly gave out. "No, I saw the death certificate. You saw what we wanted you to see. Margaret's death was convenient timing. It accelerated our timeline, forced you into the open sooner than we'd planned. But it's better this way." Alexander stood, his eyes never leaving Victoria's face. "Do you know what you are? What you're capable of?" "Diana told me. I was genetically modified." "Modified. What a pedestrian word." Alexander gestured dismissively. "You're the culmination of 50 years of research, the perfect fusion of enhanced genetics and natural human development. Your immune system can fight off virtually any pathogen. Your cellular regeneration borders on the miraculous. Your cognitive abilities, IQ, emotional intelligence, pattern recognition, test at levels we didn't think were achievable. He took another step toward her, and Victoria took one back. But do you know what makes you truly special? What makes you different from me and all the other failures? His voice dropped to something almost reverent. You can have children, natural children, who will inherit your enhancements. The implications crashed over Victoria like a tidal wave. You want to breed me like an animal. You want to offer you a choice. Join us willingly. Help us refine the process. Create a new generation of enhanced humans who can solve the problems baseline humanity is too limited to address. Or refuse, and we take what we need anyway. But I promise you, the first option is considerably more pleasant. You're describing eugenics. You're talking about evolution. Guided, intentional evolution. Alexander's eyes blazed with fervor. Humanity is stagnating, Victoria. We're destroying the planet, destroying each other, trapped in cycles of violence and ignorance that our primitive brains can't escape. But people like you, like us, we can be better. We are better. By killing anyone who gets in your way? Victoria gestured at Diana, still kneeling in the rain, blood streaming down her face. By murdering my mother? Elizabeth was a traitor. She wanted to destroy everything we'd built, everything she'd helped create. She had to be eliminated. Alexander shrugged, as casual as if discussing the weather. And Diana here has been a nuisance for 30 years, always digging, always asking questions. It's time to close that chapter. His finger tightened on the trigger. No! Victoria lunged forward, her body moving faster than her mind could process. One moment she was 10 feet away, the next she was slamming into Alexander with enough force to send them both crashing to the ground. The gun fired, the bullet whining harmlessly into the night sky. They grappled on the wet pavement, Victoria's fingers clawing for the weapon. But Alexander was strong, impossibly strong, enhanced like her, but bigger, more trained. He twisted, slamming her head against the concrete hard enough to make her vision spark with stars.
"Is this what you want?" he snarled, pinning her down. "To waste your gifts fighting for these lesser beings? You're one of us, Victoria. You always have been." "I'm nothing like you." "Aren't you?" His face was inches from hers now, and in his eyes she saw a twisted mirror of her own features. "What do you think will happen when you try to go back to your normal life? When you tell people what you are? They'll fear you, study you, lock you away. You'll be a freak, an abomination." His words cut deep because they echoed her own fears. But beneath the terror, beneath the shock and grief, Victoria felt something else rising, something cold and hard and furious. "Get off me!" She drove her knee up, catching Alexander in the ribs with brutal force. He gasped, his grip loosening just enough for Victoria to wrench one arm free and drive her fist into his throat. He rolled away, choking, and Victoria scrambled to her feet. The gun lay between them, black and gleaming in the rain. They both dove for it. Victoria's fingers closed on the grip first, but Alexander grabbed her wrist, twisting with enough force to make bones grind. She screamed, her fingers spasming on the trigger. The gun fired again. Alexander jerked, his eyes going wide with surprise. He looked down at the spreading red stain across his pristine gray suit, then up at Victoria. "You shot me," he said, sounding almost bewildered. "You actually shot me." Victoria stumbled backward, the gun falling from her nerveless fingers. "I didn't mean... I wasn't trying to..." "Liar." Alexander pressed a hand to the wound, blood seeping between his fingers, but he was smiling, actually smiling. "There it is, the killer instinct, the survival drive we engineered into you. You are one of us." He took a step toward her, then another, even as his blood mixed with the rain on the pavement. "This isn't over, sister. This is just the beginning. Marcus is waiting, and whether you come willingly or we drag you there unconscious, you will meet your creator." Then his hand moved to his pocket, pulling out something small and black, a phone.
He pressed a button. Now. The warehouse behind them exploded in light, floodlights blazing to life with enough candle power to turn night into day. Victoria threw up her hand, blinded, and heard the sound she'd been dreading. Vehicles approaching. Multiple vehicles. Diana's voice cut through the chaos. "Victoria! The car! Go!" Victoria spun, running blind, following Diana's voice more than her vision. Hands grabbed her arm, Diana, wounded but mobile, dragging her back toward the sedan. Behind them, Alexander's laughter echoed like madness. They reached the car. Diana shoved Victoria into the driver's seat. "Drive, I'll navigate." Victoria jammed the key into the ignition, her hands shaking so badly she nearly dropped it. The engine roared to life. She floored the accelerator, the tires fishtailing on the wet pavement before the tires caught and they rocketed forward. In the rearview mirror, she saw Alexander standing in the glare of the floodlights, still bleeding, still smiling, and behind him, black SUVs were pouring into the warehouse lot like a swarm of predatory insects. "Left!" Diana shouted. "Left here!" Victoria took the turn, tires squealing. The engine whined in protest as she pushed it past 70, 80, 90 miles per hour through city streets that were never designed for such speed. "Who were all those people?" Victoria's voice was barely recognizable, high and tight with panic. "Marcus's people, his organization. They've been building for decades, recruiting, expanding. Helix Corp was just the surface, just the legitimate face." Diana clutched her bleeding side, her face pale but determined. "Victoria, listen to me. We need to disappear. Completely. New identities, new lives. It's the only way." "I can't just disappear. I have a life, a job, friends. All of which means nothing if you're dead or imprisoned in some underground lab being forced to bear designer children."
Boston woke slowly. Sunrise painting the city in shades of gold and gray as Victoria and Diana approached Massachusetts General Hospital. They'd stopped once at an all-night pharmacy, where Diana had used a fake ID and cash to buy medical supplies for her gunshot wound. The bullet had passed through cleanly, more luck than design, but she'd lost blood and needed bandaging. Victoria had watched with clinical detachment as Diana cleaned and dressed the wound herself, working with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd done this before, multiple times. "You're thinking of killing him," Diana had said as she wrapped gauze around her torso. Not a question, a statement. "Yes." "Good, because if you weren't, I'd worry you hadn't truly grasped the situation." Diana had tied off the bandage, then looked Victoria in the eye. "But before you commit to that path, make sure you understand what it means. Marcus Ashford isn't just a man, he's an idea. Kill him and someone else will take his place. The organization will continue." "Then I'll kill them too." Diana had smiled at that, cold and approving. "Now you sound like Elizabeth. She said something similar right before they murdered her. If I have to burn down every lab, kill every scientist involved, I will protect my daughter." But they got to her first. Now, as they pulled into the hospital's visitor parking garage, Victoria felt that same fierce protectiveness burning in her chest. Not for a child she'd never had, but for the truth, for justice, for the woman who'd carried her, loved her, and died trying to protect her. "The maternity ward," Diana said as they walked through the hospital's automatic doors. "That's where Elizabeth gave birth, where she died. If she hid something here, it would be there." The hospital was beginning its daily routine, nurses changing shifts, doctors making morning rounds, the antiseptic smell of industrial cleaning products mixing with coffee and anxiety. Victoria and Diana moved through the corridors with purpose, two women who looked like they belonged. Diana had coached her during the drive. "Walk like you own the space. Make eye contact, but don't hold it too long. If anyone questions you, act irritated that they're wasting your time. Confidence is 9/10 of infiltration." They took the elevator to the 4th floor, the maternity ward. Victoria's pulse quickened as they stepped out into a hallway painted in cheerful pastels, with photographs of newborns lining the walls. One of those babies had been her. 33 years ago, in this very building, Elizabeth Monroe had given birth and then died. What had she been thinking in those final moments? Had she held Victoria, looked into her daughter's eyes, and known she was saying goodbye?
Now, as they pulled into the hospital's visitor parking garage, Victoria felt that same fierce protectiveness burning in her chest. Not for a child she'd never had, but for the truth, for justice, for the woman who carried her, loved her, and died trying to protect her. The maternity ward, Diana said as they walked through the hospital's automatic doors. That's where Elizabeth gave birth, where she died. If she hid something here, it would be there. The hospital was beginning its daily routine. Nurses changing shifts, doctors making morning rounds, the antiseptic smell of industrial cleaning products mixing with coffee and anxiety. Victoria and Diana moved through the corridors with purpose, two women who looked like they belonged. Diana had coached her during the drive. Walk like you own the space. Make eye contact, but don't hold it too long. If anyone questions you, act irritated that they're wasting your time. Confidence is 9/10 of infiltration. They took the elevator to the 4th floor, the maternity ward. Victoria's pulse quickened as they stepped out into a hallway painted in cheerful pastels, with photographs of newborns lining the walls. One of those babies had been her. 33 years ago, in this very building, Elizabeth Monroe had given birth and then died. What had she been thinking in those final moments? Had she held Victoria, looked into her daughter's eyes, and known she was saying goodbye? "Diana," Victoria's voice cracked. "I found something." Diana abandoned the computer, moving to Victoria's side. They both stared at the envelope, this message from the dead, this final communication from a mother to a daughter who'd never known her. Victoria broke the seal. Inside was a key, small silver with a number engraved on it, 247, and beneath it, a single page of paper covered in Elizabeth's handwriting. "My darling girl, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and you've learned at least some of the truth. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry for the burden I've placed on you, for the life I've condemned you to. But I want you to know that despite everything, despite the circumstances of your conception, despite the horror of what was done, I loved you from the first moment I knew you existed. You were not a mistake. You were not just an experiment. You were mine." The key opens a safe deposit box at First Boston Bank, account number 8472391. Inside, you'll find my complete research notes, including documentation of what they did to you. More importantly, you'll find information about the failsafe. Victoria, you need to understand what that means. The enhancements they gave you, the strength, the intelligence, the accelerated healing, they come with a price. Your cellular regeneration rate is so high that it will eventually start affecting your aging process. By the time you're 50, you'll look 30. By the time you're 80, you'll look 45. You could live for 150 years, maybe longer. But that's not the price I'm talking about. The real cost is psychological. Enhanced intelligence means enhanced everything, including the capacity for violence, for manipulation, for viewing other humans as inferior. I saw it in the other trial subjects, the gradual shift from empathy to apathy to sociopathy. Marcus called it evolutionary superiority. I called it losing our humanity. So I built in a failsafe, a genetic switch that will activate on your 35th birthday. When it does, all of the enhancements will begin to degrade. Within 5 years, you'll be completely normal, average, ordinary. You'll age like everyone else, get sick like everyone else, die like everyone else. Marcus doesn't know about this. No one does except me. It's my final act of defiance against what they turned my daughter into. But there's something you should know. The failsafe can be reversed. The degradation can be stopped. The enhancements preserved. The process is detailed in my notes. It requires a very specific genetic therapy administered within a narrow window after the failsafe activates. So you have a choice to make, my darling girl. A choice I hope I've given you the wisdom to make correctly. Do you want to stay enhanced, superior, other? Or do you want to be human?
Choose carefully, because once the failsafe activates, you only have 6 months to reverse it. After that, the decision is permanent. I love you. I will always love you. Elizabeth. Victoria read the letter 3 times, each word sinking into her like stones into water. Her 35th birthday was in 2 years. In 2 years, everything that made her special, everything that Marcus Ashford had created, everything that defined who she was, would start to crumble, unless she chose to stop it. Jesus Christ, Diana breathed, reading over her shoulder. She gave you a way out, a way to escape being what they made you. Or a way to choose it for myself, Victoria said quietly. To accept the enhancements, not because I was born this way, but because I decided to keep them. Victoria, you can't be seriously considering. Why not? You've spent 30 years telling me I'm some kind of genetic aberration, that I'm dangerous, that people like me and Alexander are threats to humanity. But what if we're not? What if we're just evolution? What if we are what comes next? Diana grabbed Victoria's arm, her grip painful. Listen to yourself. You sound exactly like Marcus, like Alexander. This is what I was afraid of. The enhancements don't just change your body. They change how you think, how you see the world, how you value human life. You're saying I'm not human anymore.
I'm saying you need to decide what being human means to you, and whether you want to keep it. A sound in the hallway made both women freeze. Footsteps. Multiple sets, moving with purpose. "They found us," Diana whispered. Victoria moved to the door, peering through the small window. 3 men in suits were approaching, moving with the coordinated precision of security personnel. But these weren't hospital security. She recognized the way they moved, the barely concealed weapons beneath their jackets. Marcus's people. "We're trapped," Victoria said. "There's no other way out." Diana pulled her gun, checking the ammunition. "Then we fight our way out." But Victoria was staring at the key in her hand, at the number engraved on its surface, 247. First Boston Bank was 10 blocks away. If they could get there, if they could access the safe deposit box, they'd have everything Elizabeth had hidden. All the evidence, all the research, all the power. "No," Victoria said slowly. "We don't fight. We surrender." "What?" "Think about it. They're not going to kill us here in a public hospital. They need us alive. Me for their breeding program, you for whatever information you have. So they'll take us somewhere more private. Yes, and then they'll torture us and probably murder us." Victoria met Diana's eyes. "Not if we're faster, stronger, better than them." Understanding dawned on Diana's face. "You want to let them capture us, then escape from the inside. It's risky. It's insane. But it's also our best chance of finding Marcus. They'll take us directly to him." The footsteps were closer now, seconds away. Diana stared at Victoria for a long moment, then slowly lowered her gun. "Elizabeth would be proud of you, or horrified. I honestly can't tell which. Maybe both." The door burst open. The 3 men flooded in, weapons drawn, shouting commands. Victoria raised her hand slowly, the key clutched in her palm where they couldn't see it. Diana did the same. One of the men spoke to a radio. "We have them. Both targets secured, awaiting extraction." A voice crackled back, cold and familiar. "Bring them to the estate. Marcus wants to meet his daughter personally." It was Alexander's voice, wounded but alive, and sounding very, very pleased. Victoria allowed them to zip-tie her wrists, allowed them to march her and Diana out of the records room and through the hospital corridors. Staff and patients watched with wide eyes as they passed, but no one intervened, no one called the police, because the men moved with such authority, such official purpose, that everyone assumed it was legitimate. That was the secret, Victoria realized. The real power wasn't in the genetic enhancements, or the technology, or even the money. It was in making people believe you had the right to do whatever you wanted. And once you believed that yourself, once you truly internalized that you were superior and therefore entitled, you became capable of anything. Was that what Elizabeth had been afraid of? That her daughter would look at ordinary humans and see cattle? That the enhancements would corrupt not just her body but her soul? They reached the parking garage. A black van waited, engine running. Victoria and Diana were shoved inside, the doors slamming shut behind them with the finality of a coffin lid closing. As the van pulled out onto Boston's morning streets, Victoria caught a glimpse of the city through the tinted windows. Ordinary people going about their ordinary lives, completely unaware that their world was built on lies, that evolution was happening in secret laboratories beneath their feet, that their children's children might not be human at all, but something new, something better, or something monstrous. In 2 years, Victoria would have to choose, but right now she had a more immediate concern: surviving the next few hours, finding Marcus Ashford, and finally getting answers. The van turned onto the highway, heading west out of the city, toward whatever estate Marcus called home, toward the culmination of 33 years of secrets and lies, toward the truth. And Victoria realized, with a cold certainty that felt like ice in her veins, that she was ready. Ready to meet the man who'd created her, ready to learn what she truly was, and ready to decide whether that man deserved to live for what he'd done. The Ashford estate sprawled across 200 acres of pristine Massachusetts countryside, hidden behind walls that looked like they'd been there for centuries but were actually reinforced with modern security systems. Victoria caught glimpses of it through the van's windows as they passed through 3 separate checkpoints: rolling lawns, ancient oaks, a manor house that looked like something out of a Gothic novel. This was where it had all begun, where Marcus Ashford had conceived his vision of human perfection, where he'd orchestrated Elizabeth's death, where he'd controlled Victoria's entire life from the shadows. The van stopped in front of the manor's entrance, massive oak doors with iron hinges that looked medieval. The men hauled Victoria and Diana out roughly, marching them up stone steps worn smooth by generations of feet. Inside, the manor was everything old money could buy: marble floors, crystal chandeliers, oil paintings, and gilded frames. But beneath the elegant surface, Victoria noticed the modern touches: security cameras in every corner, reinforced doors with biometric locks, the faint hum of sophisticated ventilation systems that suggested underground facilities. They were led down a corridor lined with portraits. Victoria recognized some of the faces from history books: Ashfords who'd been senators, industrialists, philanthropists, a dynasty built on influence and secrets. At the end of the corridor was a study. Large windows overlooked manicured gardens where morning mist still clung to the grass like ghosts. Behind an enormous mahogany desk sat a man. He was old. Victoria hadn't expected that. Somehow the villain in her mind had been younger, more vital. But Marcus Ashford was 83 if he was a day, his face a map of wrinkles, his hands spotted with age. He wore a burgundy smoking jacket over a crisp white shirt, and when he looked up at Victoria's entrance, his eyes, pale blue and sharp as surgical steel, held the weight of decades. Victoria. Her name on his lips sounded like a prayer or a curse. Come, sit. We have so much to discuss. The guards cut the zip ties from her wrists, then retreated to stand by the door. Diana was shoved into a chair in the corner, still bound, blood seeping through her bandages. But Victoria remained standing, studying the man who'd shaped her entire existence. "You don't look surprised to see me," Marcus said, a slight smile playing at his lips. "Alexander said you were clever. I'm pleased to see he was correct. You're supposed to be dead. Reports of my demise, as the saying goes." Marcus gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Please, let's be civilized about this. You murdered my mother. I eliminated a security risk. There's a difference." Marcus poured 2 glasses of amber liquid from a crystal decanter, whiskey, probably older than Victoria. Elizabeth understood the magnitude of what we were attempting. She understood the necessity of secrecy, and then she decided her personal ethics mattered more than the future of humanity. I couldn't allow that. Victoria moved to the desk slowly, every muscle coiled and ready. She could feel it now, the enhancements Diana had described. Her heart rate was elevated but controlled, her senses hyper-aware of every sound and movement in the room, her body calculating distances and trajectories with mechanical precision. She could kill him, right now, before the guards could react. It would be easy. But she needed answers first. Victoria sat, accepting the whiskey but not drinking it. "Tell me about the failsafe." Marcus's eyes widened fractionally, the first genuine surprise she'd seen from him. "You've read Elizabeth's letter. Impressive. I've had people searching for that for 30 years. She was smarter than you gave her credit for." "No, I always knew exactly how brilliant she was. That's why I recruited her. That's why her betrayal stung so deeply." Marcus sipped his whiskey, savoring it. The failsafe was her final act of sabotage, a genetic time bomb designed to undo decades of work. But you know what the truly ingenious part was? She made it reversible. She gave you a choice.
Why would she do that? Because Elizabeth believed in free will, in human agency. She thought that if you chose to remain enhanced, if you embraced what you are with full knowledge of the implications, then the enhancements were ethical. Marcus leaned back in his chair, studying her. "Do you know what you're going to choose?" "No." "Liar. You know exactly what you're going to choose. I can see it in your eyes. You've tasted what you're capable of, the speed, the strength, the clarity of thought. You've felt superior to the cattle around you, and you liked it." Victoria's jaw tightened. "I'm not like Alexander. I'm not like you." "Aren't you? You shot him last night, center mass, kill shot, and according to the surveillance footage we recovered, you didn't hesitate. You didn't agonize. You just acted." Marcus smiled, cold and knowing. "That's what makes you perfect, Victoria. You have the enhancements, yes, but more than that, you have the instinct, the will to survive at any cost." "Is that what this is about? Survival?" "It's about evolution. Natural selection doesn't work anymore. Medicine and society have neutralized it. Weak humans reproduce just as successfully as strong ones. Intelligence doesn't correlate with reproductive success. We're stagnating as a species, breeding ourselves toward mediocrity." Marcus's voice gained intensity, the zealot's fire burning behind his elderly facade. "But we can fix that. We can guide human evolution, create a new subspecies that's stronger, smarter, better equipped to face the challenges of the next millennium." "By playing God?" "By being God." Marcus stood, moving to the window. Outside, the sun had burned away the morning mist, revealing the estate's grounds in perfect clarity. "Do you know how many people I've created? How many enhanced individuals are walking around right now, completely unaware of what they are?" Victoria's blood ran cold. "How many?" 43, scattered across the world, different ages, different backgrounds. Some are children still, others are adults living ordinary lives, never suspecting they're part of something larger. Marcus turned back to her. "You're the oldest, the first successful long-term subject, which makes you invaluable for the next phase." "The breeding program?" "Such a crude term. I prefer to think of it as selective parenthood. Match you with other enhanced individuals, study how the genetics combine and express across generations. Within 3 generations, we could have a population of thousands. Within 5, tens of thousands. A new race rising within humanity, ready to take their rightful place as our evolution's next step." "You're talking about replacing humanity." I'm talking about saving it. Left to their own devices, humans will destroy themselves within the next 100 years. Climate collapse, nuclear war, resource depletion. But enhanced humans, we have the intelligence to solve these problems, the lifespan to think in centuries rather than quarters, the emotional stability to make hard decisions without the weakness of sentiment. The weakness of sentiment? Diana's voice cut across the room, hoarse but defiant. You mean like love, compassion, the things that make us human? Marcus barely glanced at her. Precisely. Those emotions were useful when we were small tribes struggling to survive, but in a global civilization of 8 billion people, they're evolutionary dead weight. They make us prioritize family over species, immediate comfort over long-term survival, individual rights over collective good. He turned back to Victoria. You feel it, don't you? The distance, the separation. You look at ordinary people and you see how limited they are, how small their thoughts, how petty their concerns. It's not cruel to acknowledge superior genetics, it's simply truth. And the horrifying thing was, he was right. Or at least part of Victoria felt he was right. Over the past 24 hours, she'd noticed it. The way her mind worked faster than the people around her, the way she could predict their reactions, manipulate their responses, the way she'd shot Alexander without the paralysis of doubt that should have accompanied taking a human life.
Was that the enhancements, or was it who she'd always been, just finally revealed? I want to see the others, Victoria said quietly. The other 43. I want to know who they are. Marcus smiled, a genuine smile this time, pleased. Of course, you're their progenitor, in a sense. They all owe their existence to the success of your genetic template. He moved to a wall panel, pressing his palm against it. A hidden door slid open, revealing a staircase descending into darkness. Come, let me show you what your legacy has built. Victoria stood, glancing at Diana. The older woman shook her head fractionally. A warning. Don't go down there. Don't see what he wants you to see. But Victoria had to know, had to see the full scope of what Marcus had created, what she was part of. She followed Marcus down the stairs, the guards falling in behind her. The temperature dropped as they descended, the air growing sterile and processed. They passed through multiple security checkpoints, each requiring biometric verification from Marcus. Finally, they emerged into a vast underground facility that stretched in every direction: laboratories, medical bays, living quarters. And people. Dozens of people in white coats working at computers and lab benches, monitoring equipment Victoria didn't recognize. A hidden city beneath the manor, devoted entirely to Marcus's vision. Welcome, Marcus said, spreading his arms, to the future. He led her through the facility, pointing out various projects, genetic sequencing equipment, embryonic incubation chambers, neural mapping technology. It was overwhelming, the scale of it. This wasn't some rogue scientist's basement operation. This was a fully funded, professionally staffed research institution. How? Victoria asked. How have you kept the secret? How have you funded it? Money, my dear, is never an issue when you have enough of it. As for secrecy, well, people see what they expect to see: a billionaire's estate, charitable foundations, medical research grants. No one looks too closely when the paperwork is in order and the right people are paid to not ask questions. They reached a large room with a glass wall. Behind it, Victoria could see what looked like a classroom. And in that classroom, sitting at desks, taking some kind of test, children. 10 of them, ranging in age from perhaps 6 to 12, all concentrating intensely on the papers before them, all looking completely normal. Enhanced? Victoria whispered. Every one. Different genetic profiles, different enhancement focuses. Some are optimized for intelligence, others for physical capabilities. A few are being raised here, orphans we acquired through various channels. Others live with families who believe they adopted perfectly normal children. Marcus watched them with something that might have been paternal pride. In 15 years, they'll be ready to begin the reproduction phase, matched with adult-enhanced individuals, you, for instance, to create the next generation. Victoria's stomach churned. These were children. Playing with genetic code was one thing, but this, raising human beings as breeding stock. You're disgusted, Marcus observed her expression clinically. That's the humanity in you, the baseline ethics your adoptive mother instilled. But consider, those children will live longer, healthier, more fulfilling lives than any baseline human. They'll be capable of achievements ordinary people can't even imagine. Is it really so terrible to guide them toward optimal breeding partners? We arrange marriages for livestock to improve the species. Why not for humans? Because we're not livestock. Aren't we? Marcus's eyes were cold now, the grandfatherly facade cracking. What is humanity but a particularly clever species of ape? We eat, we breed, we die. The only thing that separates us from animals is our ability to shape our own evolution, to transcend our biological limitations. That's what I'm offering you, Victoria, transcendence. He pulled a syringe from his pocket. When had he grabbed that? Filled with pale blue liquid. This is the counteragent, the treatment that will prevent the failsafe from activating. One injection and you remain enhanced forever. You become part of humanity's future instead of its past. Victoria stared at the syringe, mesmerized. It would be so easy. One choice and she'd never have to worry about degrading, about becoming ordinary, about losing the clarity and power she'd only just begun to understand. But at what cost? What about Diana? Victoria asked, her voice barely audible. Diana Volkov has been a thorn in my side for 3 decades. She dies today. Painlessly if you cooperate, painfully if you don't. And if I refuse the injection? Marcus's expression hardened. Then we keep you here until your 35th birthday. Let the failsafe activate, and then we administer the counteragent anyway, but only after you've experienced what it means to become baseline, to feel your enhancements slipping away, your mind dulling, your body weakening. It's apparently quite traumatic. You've done this before. Twice. 2 subjects who proved difficult. Both begged for the counteragent after experiencing just a week of degradation. Both agreed to cooperate fully with the breeding program afterward. Victoria looked at the children behind the glass, then back at Marcus. You're a monster. I'm a visionary, and someday, centuries from now, enhanced humans will look back at this moment and recognize me as the father of their species. They'll build statues of me, write epics about me. I'll be remembered alongside Darwin and Einstein and... Victoria moved. Her hands shot out faster than Marcus could react, faster than the guards could even process. She grabbed the syringe, twisted Marcus's wrist back with enough force to make bones crack, and drove the needle into his carotid artery. She pressed the plunger. The pale blue liquid flooded into Marcus's bloodstream. The old man's eyes went wide with shock and disbelief. He staggered backwards, clutching his neck, and his mouth opened in a soundless scream. What did you... The counteragent, Victoria said coldly. You said it prevents the failsafe from activating, but what happens if it's administered to someone who doesn't have the failsafe, someone whose genetics are baseline human? Marcus's face was turning purple. His hands clawed at his throat as his body began to convulse. You don't understand. The formula is designed for enhanced physiology. In baseline humans, it causes... He collapsed, seizing violently. Blood began to leak from his nose, his ears, his eyes. The counteragent was reacting with his normal genetics like poison, triggering a catastrophic immune response. The guards rushed forward, but Victoria was already moving. She grabbed the gun from the nearest guard's holster, drove her elbow into the throat hard enough to crush his windpipe, and spun to face the second guard with the weapon aimed at his head. Don't. He froze. Behind her, Marcus Ashford lay on the floor, his body still twitching in its death throes. The great visionary, the architect of humanity's future, dying from the very serum he'd created. The irony wasn't lost on Victoria. Alarms began to wail throughout the facility. Red lights strobed. Scientists and technicians scattered, running for emergency exits. On the other side of the glass, the enhanced children looked up from their tests, confused and frightened. Victoria looked at them, these innocent victims of Marcus's ambition, and made a decision. She shot out the control panel beside the glass wall. Sparks flew, and the door to the classroom unsealed with a pneumatic hiss. "Run," Victoria told the children. "All of you, run and don't look back." They didn't need to be told twice. They fled past her, up the stairs, towards freedom. Victoria grabbed the guard she'd been threatening. "Where's Diana?" I don't... She pressed the gun barrel against her kneecap. "Last chance." "Medical bay, Section C. Please, I have kids. I was just doing my job." Victoria struck him across the temple with the gun, and he dropped. She ran through the facility, following signs to Section C, the stolen weapon feeling natural in her hand, feeling right. She found Diana in a surgical suite, strapped to a table with a doctor preparing some kind of injection. Victoria shot the doctor in the shoulder, not a kill shot, just disabling, and cut Diana's restraints with a scalpel she found on a nearby tray. "We need to go, now."
Diana could barely stand, weakened from blood loss and whatever they'd been preparing to do to her. Victoria supported her weight, half carrying her back through the facility toward the stairs. Behind them, Marcus's body lay cooling in a spreading pool of blood. The great experiment, ended by his own creation. They emerged into the manor to find chaos. The staff was evacuating, the enhanced children had already escaped into the grounds, and sirens wailed in the distance. Someone had called the authorities. Or maybe the fail-safes built into the facility had automatically alerted emergency services when Marcus died. It didn't matter. Victoria and Diana stumbled out through the front doors, into morning sunlight that felt like a benediction. They made it to the tree line before Victoria's legs finally gave out and they both collapsed onto soft grass. For a long moment, they just breathed, alive, free. "You killed him," Diana finally said. "You actually killed Marcus Ashford." "Yes." "Good." Diana coughed, then winced. "Though now we have a bigger problem." "What's that?" 43 enhanced individuals scattered around the world, a massive genetic conspiracy with no head but plenty of body. And you, the person who just murdered the only man who knew exactly who and where all the test subjects are. Victoria hadn't thought of that. In killing Marcus, she'd eliminated the threat to herself, but she'd also destroyed the only comprehensive record of his experiments. The enhanced children were free, yes, but they were also lost, unmonitored, unguided. What would they become without someone to teach them, to help them navigate what they were? "We need to find them," Victoria said quietly. "All of them. We need to tell them what they are before someone else does, before they figure it out on their own and decide they really are superior." Diana studied her face. "That's going to take years, maybe decades, and you'll be racing against your 35th birthday, against the failsafe." "I know." "Have you decided what you're going to do when it activates?" Victoria looked down at her hands, these enhanced, engineered hands that had just taken a human life. She thought about Elizabeth's letter, about the choice her biological mother had given her. "I don't know yet. Ask me again in 2 years." Diana laughed, then immediately regretted it as pain flared through her wound. "You know what Elizabeth told me? The last thing she ever said right before she died?" "What?" "My daughter will be extraordinary. Not because of what I made her, but because of who she chooses to become." Diana met Victoria's eyes. "I think she'd be proud of the choice you made today." Victoria wasn't so sure. She'd murdered a man. Yes, he was a monster. Yes, he deserved it. But she'd done it so easily, with such cold efficiency. Was that humanity? Or was it the enhancements stripping away the hesitation and doubt that normal people felt before taking a life? She didn't know anymore where the genetic engineering ended and she began. Maybe she never would. Police cars were pulling up the manor's long driveway now, lights flashing. Soon there would be questions, investigations, trials. The Ashford empire would crumble. The secrets would come out. And somewhere in the world, 42 enhanced individuals were waking up to the news that their creator was dead, completely unaware that their entire existence was a lie. Victoria stood, offering her hand to Diana. Come on, we have work to do. What kind of work? The kind that takes a lifetime. Victoria looked back at the manor one last time. We're going to find every single person Marcus created. We're going to tell them the truth, and then we're going to give them the same choice Elizabeth gave me. What choice is that? Whether to be human or something else entirely.
The coffee shop in Seattle was quiet at 3 p.m. on a Tuesday. The lunch rush over, the evening crowd not yet arrived. Victoria sat at a corner table, laptop open, surveillance photos spread across the surface. She'd been tracking her latest target for 3 weeks. His name was David Chen, 28 years old, software engineer at a tech startup. By all accounts, a normal guy living a normal life. Except that he'd taught himself advanced programming in 6 months. Except that he'd never been sick a day in his life. Except that his IQ tested off the charts, and he had a peculiar ability to learn languages with almost no effort. Enhanced. Had to be. Victoria had found 18 so far. 18 of Marcus's 43 creations. Each one had received the same visit from her, a careful revelation, a patient explanation, and then a choice. 3 had taken the counteragent she'd synthesized from Marcus's notes, choosing to remain enhanced. 15 had refused it, preferring to stay baseline or to let the failsafe to grade them naturally if they carried it. She'd lost track of 2. They disappeared after learning what they were, vanishing into parts unknown. Victoria worried about them sometimes, worried about what they might become without guidance. But she was trying. That had to count for something. Her phone buzzed. A text from Diana. Found another one, Boston, sending details now. Victoria smiled. Diana had recovered fully from her gunshot wound and had thrown herself into the search with obsessive determination. Together, they'd built a network, former FBI contacts, private investigators, genetic researchers sympathetic to their cause. It was slow work, dangerous work, but important work. The door to the coffee shop opened, and David Chen walked in. Victoria recognized him instantly from her surveillance photos. Tall, athletic build, black-framed glasses that probably weren't prescription. He ordered a complicated latte, then scanned the shop for seating. His eyes landed on Victoria, held for a moment longer than random chance would explain. He knew. Somehow he knew she'd been watching him. Victoria tensed, her hand moving unconsciously toward the weapon concealed beneath her jacket. But David just smiled, a warm, genuine smile, and walked over to her table. Mind if I sit? You've been following me for 3 weeks. I figure we should probably talk about why. So much for subtlety. Victoria gestured to the empty chair. How long have you known? That you were following me? Since day 3. You're good, but I'm better. David sat, sipping his latte. That I'm enhanced? Since I was 15. I'm smarter than I should be. I figured it out. This was new. Victoria had never encountered someone who discovered their nature independently. And you never tried to find out why? Who did it? Oh, I found out. Tracked it back to Helix Corp, to Marcus Ashford. Read about his death 2 years ago. David's eyes, sharp and intelligent, studied her face. You killed him. That's what the rumors say. You're Victoria Ashford, or Victoria Monroe, depending on which name you prefer. Victoria's hand stayed near her weapon. If you know all that, you know what I'm here to offer you. The choice, stay enhanced or let the failsafe degrade me, if I even have the failsafe. David leaned back, completely relaxed. Here's the thing, Victoria. I've spent 13 years knowing what I am, and I've decided I like it. I'm going to do more good in the world as an enhanced human than I ever could as a baseline one. I'm working on AI safety protocols that could prevent catastrophic failures. I'm developing encryption systems that could protect human rights activists in authoritarian countries. I'm making a difference because of what I am, not in spite of it. That's what they all say at first. And then slowly, gradually, you start to see regular humans as lesser, as obstacles, as expendable. Victoria had given this speech 18 times now. It never gets easier. The enhancements change how you think, how you value life. You won't even notice it happening until it's too late. David was quiet for a moment, considering. Then, what about you? Your 35th birthday is in 3 months, right? What are you going to choose? The question hit harder than Victoria expected. She'd been so focused on finding the others, on giving them the choice Elizabeth had given her, that she'd almost managed to ignore her own looming deadline. In 3 months, the failsafe would activate, her enhancements would begin to degrade, and she would have 6 months to decide whether to reverse the process or let it continue, whether to stay extraordinary or become ordinary. I don't know yet, Victoria admitted.
Bullshit. David's voice was gentle but firm. You know. You've known for 2 years. You're just afraid to admit it. I'm afraid, Victoria said quietly, that if I choose to stay enhanced, I'll prove Marcus right, that I'll become exactly the kind of monster he wanted to create. Or, David said, you'll prove that being enhanced doesn't automatically make you a monster, that you can have superior genetics and still choose compassion, still choose humanity. He stood, leaving his half-finished latte on the table. Thanks for the offer, Victoria, but I'm keeping my enhancements, and I'm going to spend my life proving that people like us can make the world better, not worse. He walked out, leaving Victoria alone with her surveillance photos and her doubts. That night, in her hotel room, Victoria pulled out the counteragent. She'd synthesized enough for all 43 enhanced individuals, kept in a refrigerated case that went everywhere she did. Her insurance policy, her escape hatch. 3 months until the failsafe activated. 6 months after that until the decision became permanent. She thought about Elizabeth's letter, about Margaret's love, about Marcus's vision, about Diana's warnings, about David's confidence, about the 18 people she'd already given the choice to and the 25 she still needed to find. And she realized that David was right. She'd already made her choice. She'd made it 2 years ago when she'd killed Marcus Ashford, when she decided to dedicate her life to finding the others, to giving them the truth, to trying to guide them toward being better than what Marcus had intended. You couldn't do that as baseline human, couldn't track 43 enhanced individuals scattered across the globe, couldn't match their intelligence, their capabilities, their potential for both good and evil. To stop monsters, you had to be a monster, or at least you had to be willing to become one. Victoria looked at her reflection in the hotel mirror. Gray eyes stared back, Elizabeth's eyes, but the face was her own, not Margaret's, not Marcus's, her own. In 3 months, she would take the counteragent. She would keep her enhancements, and she would spend the next century or however long her modified genetics allowed her to live, trying to prove that you could be superior without being cruel, enhanced without losing your humanity. It was what Elizabeth would have wanted, she thought. Not the enhancements themselves, but the choice, the conscious decision to accept the gift and the burden that came with it. And if she was wrong, if the enhancements eventually corrupted her, turned her into something monstrous, well, she'd make sure Diana had access to a failsafe of her own, a way to stop her if she went too far.
Victoria's phone buzzed again. Another text from Diana. Found number 19, Tokyo. Can you get there by Friday? Victoria texted back, on my way. She packed her bag, tucked the counteragent safely into its case, and headed for the airport. There were still 25 enhanced individuals to find, 25 people who deserved the truth, 25 chances to shape what the future of humanity, enhanced and baseline, might look like. It was a burden, a responsibility, a mission that would consume the rest of her life. But it was also a gift, a purpose, a reason to be what she was. Victoria Monroe, enhanced human, looked out the airplane window. A Seattle disappeared below her, shrinking to toy-sized buildings and ant-sized cars. Somewhere down there, David Chen was working on his AI safety protocols. Somewhere in Boston, another enhanced individual waited to be found. Somewhere in the world, the future was being written one genetic sequence at a time. And Victoria, daughter of Elizabeth Monroe, creation of Marcus Ashford, student of Margaret Ashford's love, was determined to make sure that future included compassion alongside superiority, humanity alongside enhancement. It was what her mother would have wanted. Both of them. She closed her eyes and felt the failsafe ticking in her cells like a clock counting down. 3 months until activation. 6 months until the permanent choice. But she'd already decided. She'd made her choice the moment she'd walked away from Marcus Ashford's body, the moment she'd freed those children, the moment she'd decided that being enhanced meant having a responsibility to be better, not just to be superior. In the darkness behind her eyelids, Victoria saw Elizabeth's face, the woman from the photograph, laughing on that beach 33 years ago. The woman who'd carried her, loved her, and died protecting her. The woman who'd left her a choice. Thank you, Victoria thought. Thank you for making me extraordinary. And thank you even more for giving me the chance to decide what that means. The plane climbed higher, piercing through clouds into clear sky. Below, the world spun on, filled with baseline humans and enhanced ones, with monsters and heroes and everyone in between. And Victoria Monroe flew toward her next target, her next truth to reveal, her next soul to save from becoming what Marcus Ashford had intended. It would take a lifetime, maybe longer, but she had time. Enhanced humans, after all, lived a very long time indeed.